Last Monday marked the 30th anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Next, we take you to the campus of Southern Methodist University for a conference on what journalists remember of that fateful day. Panels include journalists who were in Dallas on November 22, 1963, as they discuss efforts by radio, television, and newspapers to stay on top of the story.
Before this thing developed, the Kennedy arrival, we assigned responsibilities to certain photographers. I personally had the president as my responsibility while he was in Dallas. We had, of course, other people at certain locations. I was to get the arrival at Love Field and the parade and the luncheon. Those were my responsibility. And it is important that the president's pictures were my responsibility. So at Love, everything went fine up to the point that the whole day became great frustration for a photographic person. First thing, parades were usually handled with a flatbed truck for pool and certain selected photographic personnel to ride in front of the presidential car on presidential parades. That was canceled at the last minute. We were put in Chevrolet convertibles to ride several cars back. I think we were about 6 cars, Bob Jackson and I, and a couple of other boys were in this parade. And that put us totally out of the picture.
With that background, I'm going to jump to Dealey Plaza. I was on the White House press bus. We were on Houston. I was looking across the plaza when we heard the shots. I remember 3 shots. And I've always had a memory, matter of fact, I've had nightmares about it, of the sunlight on Kennedy and the explosion, the car almost coming to a stop, almost to a dead stop, and then accelerating at tremendous speed. So I knew, his instinct, I knew that he had been shot, at least shot at.
But what I couldn't really believe, as someone else mentioned, was the car had, after that first shot, had come practically to a stop. And later on, in looking back on, I said I could not believe how well-trained Secret Service people reacted so slowly. I would have expected that from ordinary human beings, but I expected that they would have reacted much quicker, because I've always felt in my mind that I knew the first shot missed. I had never wavered on that, and I see now that it's getting a lot of support. But I said that from day one, that the first shot missed. I've never changed my mind on that. I felt the second shot was not a mortal blow, so I felt that had there been proper reaction time, that the man might still be alive today. I said that the shots appeared to have come from behind me and to my right, and I did say seemed to. I didn't say they did come from that direction. And secondly, I had spoken to my friends just prior to the event, suggesting that the grassy knoll would be the perfect spot for an assassin. So I said it was somewhat like self-fulfilling prophecy, that when it happened, I naturally expected to have come from where I had predicted it would come from.
The president's friend, Dave Powers, now director of the Kennedy Library in Boston, remembers talking to a grief-stricken Bill Greer, the Secret Service agent who drove Kennedy's car. What if they'd sped out of Dealey Plaza after the first shots, but before the fatal one?
I thought it always, and so did he, but Bill, all those agents were very close to us, and that they felt so bad.
If the driver of the president's car had stepped on the gas after the first 2 shots,
yes, that president would be alive today.
I want to go back for a moment, and I hate to focus on gory details, but there's a great deal of debate about the head wound itself. Is there any way you can describe sort of what you observed as far as where the head wound was located?
Not knowing medical terms, right rear head.
You observed as far as where the head wound was located?
Not knowing medical terms, right rear head.
The president's friend, Dave Powers, now director of the Kennedy Library in Boston, remembers talking to a grief-stricken Bill Greer, the Secret Service agent who drove Kennedy's car. What if they'd sped out of Dealey Plaza after the first shots, but before the fatal one?
I thought of it always, and so did he. You know, Bill, all those agents were very close to us, and that they felt so bad.
If the driver of the president's car had stepped on the gas after the first two shots,
Yes.
what?
That president would be alive today, and he'd be 71 years old, and he'd be the director here, and and I'd be the assistant.
It makes you realize how much Kennedy was a sitting duck.
10-4-1 is a pretty good crowd there.
The motorcade turns off Main Street and enters Dealey Plaza, and they make a short right-hand turn onto Houston Street.
In the presidential car, Jackie hears Governor Connolly's wife say to the president, "You certainly can't say that the people of Dallas haven't given you a nice welcome."
And the president says, "No, you sure can't." Then they make the really tight jog onto Elm Street. Now, this was all a violation of Secret Service protocol and common sense. You're never supposed to take the president in a situation where you're slowing the car down like that.
The president's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark. I was on Simmons Freeway earlier, and even the freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the president.
The first shot rings out. The vast majority of Dealey Plaza witnesses thought it was a firecracker or even a motorcycle backfire.
Stand by, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Several police officers are rushing up the hill. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
Secret Service agent Kellerman screams into his radio.
Lawson, this is Kellerman, we've been hit. Win Lawson was the agent in the lead car in front of them. We've been hit. Get us to the hospital immediately.
Stand by. 10-4 Parkland has been notified, 1232.
Jackie Kennedy tries to get out of the limousine, her pink suit covered in her husband's blood. As the motorcade screeches to a halt, Agent Kellerman helps lift the president out of the car.
He said JFK's eyes were open and it looked like all signs of life were gone, although technically he did have a heartbeat and technically he lived for another 20 to 30 minutes. But for all intents and purposes, he was DOA.
Suspicion has also been cast on some of those closest to the president, in particular Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman and his team of agents.
They definitely felt like they failed their mission. They had one job to do, the number one most important job. The life of the president was taken.
Although he never spoke about the assassination, Kellerman hinted he thought there was more to the story than just Lee Harvey Oswald.
I spoke to his widow, her name was June, and she said that Roy accepted that there was a conspiracy. In fact, when he spoke to the House Select Committee, he says, "I'll accept that." It's like, wait, so Roy accepted there was a conspiracy? Yes, he believed there was a conspiracy, but she never got any details from him, nothing. Love field luggage duty during the motorcade, during the assassination. It's ridiculous.
Secret Service agent Clint Hill is also recalled from his position on the opposite side of the limousine. Emory Roberts had been the only one of 3 Secret Service shift leaders from the White House that was part of the motorcade.
Emory Roberts was in charge of the follow-up car that was immediately behind JFK, full of Secret Service agents. He was the general, so to speak, of the follow-up car. If he said something, that's how it went.
Emory Roberts, however, received his orders from Floyd Boring, the number 2 man of the Secret Service White House detail, based in Washington.
Floyd Boring He was in charge of planning the Texas trip, and he was the one who gave out assignments.
In an interview with the Assassination Records Review Board in 1996, he stated that there had been no change in policy for the Dallas trip and put the blame on President Kennedy. The number one man and head of the White House detail, Gerald Bain, was on vacation starting the week before the Texas trip, which left the immediate handling of the trip to Boring. Floyd Boring's right-hand man in charge of the logistics on the ground in Texas was Special Agent Winston Lawson.
Winston Lawson came from the Buffalo, Syracuse, New York area. He was a former counterintelligence agent in the Army, and he joined the Secret Service in 1959. And again, he was an advance agent, an agent that would actually go to the different cities, towns in America and overseas in advance to work with the local police and dignitaries, whatnot, to get everything in line with motorcade rides, building security, etc., etc.
Lawson, assisted by Agent Roger Warner, set the order of the vehicles in the Dallas motorcade.
The normal order would have been to have a pilot car and a lead car, which was done in Dallas. Then you had a flatbed truck of the press photographers in front of the limousine filming and being eyewitnesses, and that in and of itself is a deterrent. And you had the press buses close behind the limousine, again, professional newsmen, eyewitnesses, they would have been there filming.
Conveniently, the press was moved back at the last minute. There wouldn't have been a need for Abraham Zapruder, an amateur, to film the assassination.
Another break from routine in the Dallas motorcade, the positioning of police motorcycles around the president's limousine.
As with any other motorcade, the Secret Service worked hand in hand with local authorities to ensure the safety of the president. Usually surrounding the car, there would be a group of motorcycles. This was not only to obscure or block the view of potential assassins, but also to...
It's very obvious it's a thinly veiled attempt to rewrite history and to blame President Kennedy without trying to blame him for his own assassination.
He alleges that because he sent me a letter, 22 pages in length apparently, and that I discussed that with Jerry. I forgot that I ever got a 22-page letter from this particular individual until I heard him say it on TV. And I never discussed it with Jerry or anybody else because it wasn't important to me. And insofar as him being an expert, I don't know where the expert part came from. I spent a long time in the Secret Service in protection, and I'm not an expert, but apparently he became an expert somewhere up in Pennsylvania. I don't know where.
As an aside, by the way, the fellow we talked about in the last interview, Vince Palomaro,
yeah.
Have you seen his letter to the about your book?
I've not read it, no.
I'm sure you probably know that he said that Mrs. Kennedy and Me is highly recommended to everyone for its honesty and rich body of truth. He actually fully endorsed your book, even though he's been critical of...
Well, I'll accept his endorsement.
Are you worried that he's being...
Well, maybe he has some secret agenda, I don't know, but I accept his praise. Thank you.
My assessment of Mr. Palomero is that he called probably all of the agents, and what agent who answers a phone is going to answer a question, was President Kennedy easy to protect? Well, probably he was too easy to protect because he was assassinated. But the fact that the agents aren't going to tell him anything, and he alludes to the fact that when I wrote the book, most of these people were dead. Well, I worked with these people. I knew them like brothers, and I knew exactly what was going on. And I always respected Jim Rowley because he stood up to the issue and said, look, we can't say the president invited himself to be killed, so let's squash this. So, Mr. Palomero, there are a number of things that have happened, but he has no credibility. He's a self-described expert in his area, which I don't know what it is. He was born after the assassination, and he keeps creating solutions to the assassination until they're proven wrong. So he's the Zapruder film. When the Zapruder film is run at normal speed, another theme that Paul O'Mara throws out is that Bill Greer stopped the car. When it's run at its normal speed, you'll notice the car absolutely does not stop at all. This happened in less than 6 seconds after the president was hit in the throat.
There are so many stories out there that strictly theory. People claim that they're experts. They have no basis to make that claim. I was a special agent in charge of Vice President Protection, special agent in charge of Presidential Protection, and Assistant Director of Protective Forces for the United States Secret Service. I'm not an expert, but apparently some of these people out there who write these books and concoct these theories are experts.
People as diverse as Vince Bugliosi, the History Channel, the Assassination Records Review Board, and even ironically Brian Lamb have called me a Secret Service expert. I mean, it is what it is.
And this man's name is Vince Palomara. He's a citizen who has taken it on his own to become an expert. He's from Pennsylvania, and I don't know him. I've never talked to him. I've just seen it on the web. And he is, I believe he's a graduate of Duquesne University. So let's watch this, and I'll get your reaction to it.
Hi, this is Vince Palomara, the self-described Secret Service expert that Jerry Blaine accuses me of without naming me, okay? Back with my obsession about the Kennedy detail. I gotta read this. This is rich. Page 287. This is what Blaine's claiming Raleigh said. Raleigh turned to Jerry Blaine, and Jerry, since you were in the lead car, did you ever hear this over your radio as well? Yes, sir, I did. I heard exactly what Floyd just told you. The thing about this is the whole thing about the Ivy League charlatans thing. Jerry Blaine told me the Ivy League charlatans thing came from the guys. I can't remember who said it. Boy, his memory got real good 5 years later, because now he's claiming he heard it over the radio. Floyd Boring, okay? Just unbelievable. It's just amazing to me, you know? There never would have been a book if I didn't send a 22-page letter, okay, to Clint Hill that pissed him off so much that his very good friend Jerry Blaine came out with this book as a counter, okay? There's some nice things I recommend everybody to buy. I'm not into censorship. This is my First Amendment rights, okay? It's got some nice pictures, some nice non-assassination things, and there's even some good assassination-related things in here. But it's very obvious. It's other people picked up on it. That's why there's some really bad reviews on Amazon right now. Mine's the best of a bunch at 3 stars, too. It's very obvious it's a thinly veiled attempt to rewrite history and to blame President Kennedy without trying to blame him for his own assassination.
First of all, his is not the best of the reviews. There are 7 with 5 stars, just in case for the record, that I saw today when I looked on Amazon. What's your reaction? Could you hear?
Well, he wrote an assessment of the book about the first time about 5 weeks before it was released. The second time on Amazon.com, he and 4 of his friends, or 4 of his aliases, put a statement on assessing the book, a 1, a 2, and a 3. My assessment of Mr. Palomara is that he called probably all of the agents, and what agent who answers a phone is going to answer a question, was President Kennedy easy to protect? Well, probably he was too easy to protect because he was assassinated. But the fact that the agents aren't going to tell him anything, and he alludes to the fact that when I wrote